I fear the media may be slightly disappointed in the press conference, and that's simply a matter of now the hard work really has to begin of tracing and interviewing all the witnesses, and particularly those witnesses that are probably the most important, the ones who've actually been injured or who are close to the ones who were badly injured. There will be a whole process of forensic examination of the victims, of the perpetrators, and of the train and the train platform, which takes days, not hours.
Let's bring you what we know so far. 10 people are in hospital, including 9 who have life-threatening injuries after being stabbed on a train in Cambridgeshire. The train had just left Peterborough when the attack is understood to have begun, and around 14 minutes later it pulled into the next station, Huntingdon. It was not scheduled to stop there, but that is where the attackers were stopped and arrested. One passenger, called Gavin, described the scene on the train.
There was multiple people that had been stabbed that was making their way down, but the suspect had also come off the train as well. So while we were being told to come out of the station, the suspect was obviously running rampant as well, and I don't know reason. No one knows the reason why.
Kate Finlius, content editor at Cambridgeshire Live, she told us what happened last night.
The attack took place on a train that was travelling from Doncaster to London King's Cross, and that departed at 6:25. It was reported that the incident started after people boarded the train at Peterborough at about 7:30. It then made an unscheduled stop, as you mentioned, at 7:39, and that's around about the same time that the emergency services were called as well. Within those couple of minutes, it was met with armed police at the scene, and there was a sea of blue lights, essentially, with paramedics, air ambulances, everything that one could possibly throw at an incident like this at the scene. And within a few minutes, 2 suspects were arrested.
Well, earlier on Times Radio Breakfast, we heard from the Independent travel correspondent Simon Calder, who says train staff, signallers and the emergency services acted remarkably.
What an extraordinary performance it was on behalf of the train crew, particularly the driver, the Network Rail signallers, the armed police, who in the course of 14 minutes, and we know this rolled out from the departure of the train on time at 7:30, they managed to coordinate everything so that this train, instead of running through the middle of Huntingdon station on the fast lines with no platform at 125 miles an hour, they actually got it to stop where armed police were waiting.
Well, we also heard from a former counter-terror chief at the Ministry of Defence, that's Chip Chapman. He explained how the investigation will now proceed.
The first thing they do is exploit all the different computers and phones of those 2 assailants. We don't actually know it was 2 assailants. There may only have been 1. People talk about 1 at the moment. So really what they're looking at is, if this was a terrorist attack, is another attack coming? Was it one person or a network? Is there a foreign link? What role did the community play if this was plotted? All those sort of things. But again, those are things, if it was in, we need to either confirm or deny in terms of that sort of exploitation. But that's what they'll be looking at. Now, mass stabbing on this scale is highly unusual. So, don't want to underplay this. There doesn't also appear to be any sort of a notion of decapitation, which often you find with these bladed weapon attacks, if they were to be terrorist attacks.
Well, the British Transport Police are leading the investigations. We understand they're to give an update shortly on the attack. We're expecting a news conference to start at 10 o'clock. Of course, timings are always subject to change in these circumstances, but we will bring that to you when we can. Let's speak now to Stephen Roberts, former Deputy Assistant Commissioner at the Metropolitan Police. Good morning, Stephen.
Good morning, Callum.
May I ask, first of all, if there's any formula or any option of predicting, ability to predict what might be happening, what update we can expect from the police at 10 o'clock? Would they give an update if they didn't have an update, if you see what I mean?
I think, having promised an update, they will give one, albeit the time may get delayed. But I would expect them to really stick to the bare facts of what they have at the moment, probably not giving you much more information than you already have. And that's because the investigation into this incident is at a really very early stage, and they will want to be very careful not to give information which later turns out to be incorrect, and not to give information which may turn out to be cause for a fair trial not being able to take place. So I fear the media may be slightly disappointed in the press conference, and that's simply a matter of now the hard work really has to begin of tracing and interviewing all the witnesses, and particularly those witnesses that are probably the most important, the ones who've actually been injured or who are close to the ones who were badly injured. There will be a whole process of forensic examination of the victims, of the perpetrators, and of the train and the train platform, which takes days, not hours.
Yeah.
And then there will be this process of interviewing the prisoners eventually. Plus, over to one side, there'll be an intelligence cell trying to pull together everything and anything that we know about what has happened, everything and anything we know about the individuals involved, and try to build up a picture in order to help the investigating officer, the senior investigating officer, to pursue this crime and put the right people with the right evidence in front of a court.
There is a sort of reasonable level of consternation from our listeners, some of whom are texting this morning, Stephen, about why we don't know more about those that have been arrested. Now, we were reading out earlier the guidance from August that had something of an update from the National Police Chiefs Council and the College of Policing, which said that the nationalities and ethnicities of attackers in such circumstances that might be similar to this should be considered for release around the time of charging, and clearly we're not at that point yet. Can you help us understand why we don't have more information on who has been arrested now?
It's very simple at the moment. Chaos is always the rule of the day at the start of these incidents, and it takes some hours to really understand what you've got and who you've got. Yeah. There may be a question, there certainly will be a question of any prisoners being examined to be fit to be detained physically, but there may also be a question, and if I were the senior investigating officer, I would make sure this happened, of having them examined as to their mental state, to make sure that any interview that does take place can take place under the right circumstances with the right protections for the individuals. So getting to who those individuals are, where they come from, why they're doing it, does take time, and quite rightly, the senior investigating officer will not want to jump the gun and say anything that may not turn out to be correct.
Do those who have been arrested have, for example, rights if they are arrested of an evening? For me, if I was the police, I would want to interview them all night long and get as many questions in as I possibly could as quickly as possible. But for example, are they allowed rest time, those who have been arrested? Are they entitled to sleep?
Yes, they are. And quite often, a decision will be made in very serious circumstances. It will sound odd, but this will have been traumatic for the people who perpetrated the crime as well.
Wow.
So the advice of the doctors and the psychiatrists will be very important in making sure that interviews take place at a time when the person being interviewed actually has a good chance of defending himself if he wants to defend himself. And the investigators, the interrogators, will have a good chance of having a profitable interview where they actually learn about what's happened. Because all of this, we have to remember, has to end up in a Crown Court.
Yeah. It's just quite you're right, of course, that the justice must be done, but it's always astonishing to hear that those who have been arrested in the aftermath of something atrocious may, they have that level of right to sleep. But I take your point that, in fact, that could enhance the quality of evidence that is given in that regard. Stephen, just a final one for you, and it's so interesting getting your insight on this. The response from the emergency services seems to have been really quite remarkable. In fact, we were told by the local MP on this programme earlier that just last week police had been practising for this sort of event, actually. What is your consideration as to safety and security on trains, which I think a lot of people listening to this will be wrestling with this morning, that it sounds horrifying and scary?
It sounds scary indeed, and I'm very glad I wasn't on that train. Yeah. But I think the incident last night demonstrates that the police service as a whole has very good plans that are rehearsed, ready for these sort of incidents and many other sort of incidents too. And when necessary, all those plans can be brought together very quickly to get the right number of people in the right location with the right equipment, the right guns, is what it comes down to deal with the problem that's in front of them. But I don't think we should forget that none of this would have been possible had the train operating company and the driver and a huge number of other staff, including health staff, all have come together as part of this plan. It seems like everybody did the right thing last night.
Yeah.
And I think we should be very grateful as the public about that.
Indeed. Stephen, thank you so much. Thanks for your time. It's good to speak to you. That's Stephen Roberts, who's a former Deputy Assistant Commissioner at the Metropolitan Police.